I believe we're alive. Alex, first of all, I got a challenge, alright? For the next two
Oh God.
hours,
Okay.
yeah, for the next 2 hours, I already promised this on like on Twitter and stuff. No politics for the next 2 hours, alright?
Oh God.
Rich, alright?
Okay. I'll try.
Yo,
Alright. I mean, I feel a little bit guilty for not like mentioning anything related to politics. You know, it's like it's sometimes like do these guys on Red Smoke like even get anything? But then I remember that we don't want to be like just another late night talk show. You know, it's yeah,
Yeah. I mean, we really don't know anything about politics either. So.
absolutely. It's Red Smoke. It's Berlin City's soul paradise. We change the world, but we enjoy it. For people who wear name tags to work, it's Red Smoke, baby. It's Germany's smoothest voice. It's the monarch architect, and it's the metal shogun. It's a great morning in Germany, which means a
hello.
sensational night in America. Hello there. I legitimately gotta stop with this opening line. Every time I say this, something crazy happens in the U.S. But anyways, wherever you are, welcome to Red Smoke, and we are actually connected to the U.S. this time in some way, at least. Oh yeah, you might have seen the ominous third icon at the bottom of your screen. Our guest of the week. He's a good friend of ours. Be careful, or you'll end up in his next novel. He has an amazing way with words, and when the pen meets the sword, you know who I'm talking about. And the way he soulfully swings that pen around, oh boy. Get your elements right, but don't you worry, he's easy to love. Rich Rubio, everybody.
We're doing. Hope
Yeah,
everyone's well.
awesome. By the way, Rich. Before we start, I don't want to be that that German douchebag that doesn't get it right. But is it Rubio or Rubio?
Be either or, as long as it said Rubio.
Well, all
Whatever
right.
rolls off the tongue easier.
Well, all right then. uh, Rich, are you much into politics?
I am cognizant and aware of it enough to know what is going on, but also smart enough to not put my emotions or care into it at this point because it is just a messy black hole that it just saps the energy out of everybody, their attention. Ultimately, they're just giving more and more of their time and care to politicians that don't care back, and
Mm.
to me, that doesn't check out, and that's very low ROI activity. So I stay
Wait.
cognizant. I poke fun at it, but other than that, I pretty much stay out of it.
So you mean posting under Trump's Twitter account doesn't do anything?
I mean, it's always good to see the Donald tweeting some stuff because he does get under a lot of people's skin, and it's funny because I am a big advocate of people being able to express their opinions, and he is a big spearhead of that. So I mean, it's funny, but every now and then there may be a thread that someone posts something up, and it's just absolute lunacy. You read it and you kind of look at it and go, oh, okay, I'm gonna get in and just throw little barbs that way, and then you just carry on about your day.
Yeah, Rich, you were just talking about a deep black hole. I think you came to the right place today. Yeah. I mean, look, normally I wouldn't want to do this kind of stuff on the show. I don't like to do like these artificial promotions, but we sooner or later are going to talk about it anyways. So, Rich, let me break the ice. You have written your first fantasy book, your first fantasy novel, which will have its release this month. And before we talk about this even more, allow me to like recontextualize the question again and ask: since you have written fantasy, right? Allow me to ask the old question: is it more of a political book? And by that, let me be more specific. I would ask the question whether it is more like Lord of the Rings or is it more like Game of Thrones? Is it more Tolkien or more while Game of Thrones is the more ugly, realistic, political fantasy, R-rated? I would say Lord of the Rings is more, you know. And now listen to me for a year finding the right word. Eloquent German douchebag. You get the idea, right?
I would say between the two, in
Mm-hmm.
its tone and context, it leans more towards Lord of the Rings. I'm not trying to help spearhead a novel series that revolves around politics. There's enough of it. I try to keep away from that in anything I just about write. And if I do bring it in, it needs to be there solely to help advance the plot and build around the characters instead of it being the sole focus. Because there's more than enough of it in the world nowadays. I'd like to think that people are trying to get away from it. I like to try to get people away from those kind of things and get them more invested in just enjoying a good story versus, oh, wait a minute, this is going on. Now, obviously, there's like parallels of the real world that sometimes will end up in works that I do, but I try to steer away from those and I just try to tell a good story overall.
Well, Rich, I can say you are in good company tonight. Alex, I believe you, not in English but in German, have also already published a piece of fiction, like a novel, right?
I did, yes.
So
It's a bit yeah.
yeah. I just wanted to say it's like a little bit different genre, but
Yes.
I would like to ask both of you. Let me start with the guest. Let me start with Rich. Like I really want to talk about inspiration a little bit. And Rich, like, what are your like pieces of fiction or like movies or books that inspire you to write?
There's various kinds. I kind of dabble in things that I just like and that write well into a story. I would say the top impactors that have the sway on my writing, Lord of the Rings for sure. Everyone should love Lord of the Rings, and if not, they need to question their life choices.
I agree. I
Harry
fundamentally
Goodkind's
agree.
Sword of Truth series. What?
I agree absolutely.
Yeah. Um, Terry Goodkind's Sword of Truth series. That is probably my all-time favorite book series because it's set in a fantasy world, but the fantasy isn't overdone, if that makes sense. Like the magic
Yes.
isn't too overpowered to the point where it does the narrating. It's more so the characters use it as a tool to help the plot advance, and there's a lot of real-world elements pretty well written in there that you don't feel like you're in a necessarily real-world book. I definitely love those. Uh, there's a manga and anime series out there called One Piece, and I've followed that since I was young, and just storytelling in it, it's so creative. I get a lot of my inspiration from that in the terms of the world building style writing and how the plot stays fresh and there's always just new encounters, and it goes without getting too deep in itself. It tells an easy, fun story for people to get into. And I'd have to probably say those are like my three top that kind of swirl in my head when I start writing things, and then I just go nuts after that.
I just heard about that I don't know if it was the manga or the anime that it was like the thousandth episode of One
That's the
Piece.
one.
Yeah, that's
Yep.
just crazy. I mean, I haven't. There's obviously not the time to catch this whole stuff up, right? I would need like a year or something. So yeah, but the thing is, there's the lore of this whole story is like so big. There's so much like world building. It's I would compare it a little bit to Tolkien. I mean, Tolkien has like basically written the whole Bible for his own story. So
Yeah.
yeah, those are like I would say Oda and Tolkien are like, yeah, you can say those names in one sentence. Alex.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. I just
Sorry,
wanna,
you got
no,
lost for a second there.
no, me too. That's okay. Yeah, I just wanted to ask now you what do you say like about fiction? Where do you get like your inspiration from, or where did you get your inspiration from? Because you had I would call your book dystopia. Is that good?
Oh yes.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's definitely a dystopian future. I mean, it's called social wars, so obviously there's some dystopian factor to it. It's and well, I always like these novels that have an outlook into what the future could be of mankind or the world in general. and that's why I decided to write something like that, because I just like thinking about what could potentially happen if things go this direction or that direction, and this is why I decided to write this book. But I think the inspiration for it mostly came from, um, oh God, I forgot the name of the movie actually. Great. Man, what's it called again?
That's not
It's
enough for
Ex
me,
Machina,
man.
I think yeah, I mean, God damn it.
Well, anyways, man.
I can't remember the name, but I probably will recall it along the line. But generally, it's just a future with AI, obviously. I mean, and robots, and but these robots start to develop some sort of consciousness, and obviously goes. But this one was more based in a realistic setting, and even though my novel has nothing to do with AI or like the consciousness of potentially new beings on this planet, I just enjoyed the setting of it. It's very, very dystopian and some sort of dark future. And I just used that as a setting, and then placed the whole social thing with the genders and social media and relationships and all of that on top of it. And yeah, that's usually how I get my inspirations. Actually, from movies, because I don't read novels myself a lot, to be perfectly honest. So it's mostly movies actually where I have these ideas from. I mean, I only published one novel so far, but I have a document with like I think 10 or 15 ideas for novels I could be writing at some point.
Well, you guys better stay tuned. Alex, first of all, I believe the movie you were referring to was Ex Machina. It definitely sounds like that.
Yeah, I know, but I think it wasn't that. Sorry.
And Rich, I would like to ask you, movie or book?
I can do either. I grew up more so with books. I grew up reading a lot. I can paint a better picture with my imagination than movies usually can for me. If it's a movie, it needs to be well done, and it can't be filler trash, as I call it.
Yeah.
Can't be just Hollywood grasping at straws trying to make a quick buck. I would have to probably say movies. I can usually do movies, or I'm sorry, books. I can do movies quicker, but books I get more thorough enjoyment out of.
So
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Alex,
Yeah,
you-
definitely. Yeah. Also, first of all, I remember the name. It's called Automata, the movie.
Okay. Well,
With Antonio
Alex,
Banderas.
that's awesome that you remember the movie, but now the problem is I don't know the movie.
Yeah,
but I do
Actually,
know, I do
yeah,
know
I
Ex
figured.
Machina, you know. man, this stream is a complete mess. Absolutely. Oh my god.
Yeah, it's fun, I like
to
it.
Red Smoke. Oh my god.
But to get back
yeah.
to the point, what was he talking about? Actually, yes, I agree. Obviously, reading books are more, deeper, and you can use your imagination much more to actually get the ideas from it. So, I rarely spend the time to read a whole novel. To be honest, that's usually why I go with movies.
Have you read the whole Lord of the Rings stuff? I mean, it's there are 3 pretty big books, novels.
I have. I actually own them as well as The Hobbit in one little cute box set, and it is an undertaking, but it is every worth the hype if you can stick through them. They put so much in the books that when you watch the movies, even the extended editions don't cover everything that the books wrote.
It's crazy when we have combined. Those are like almost 12 hours of footage, of movie footage. But I have to agree with you. The last time I read I actually have an edition where all 3 books are combined in one big book. So it's it's just like a huge Lord of the Rings novel, which I really love. So my memory of the book is not that good. But there's so much more to it than what the movies give. you're completely right about that. Like Tolkien was a fucking maniac, I gotta say.
Yeah, he threw so much lore in there, and not
Mm,
for the sake of people just throwing things in a series. He did it masterfully. He put it in there, and everyone could enjoy it because there are still people to this day that read extra things like the Silmarillion and all the extended universe to understand how Middle Earth was. Because he wanted to create such an in-depth universe to the point he actually used the linguistics knowledge he learned from college to make up the languages of the elves.
isn't that crazy? And that's what I call world building. And in that case, I would say Tolkien is a little bit above Oda from One Piece. I mean, whoever creates like an own language deserves the prize, you know.
Yeah, I think Tolkien, he definitely has the crown for the most in-depth world builder. I'd say Oda probably has the most addictive style and ease to get into
Yes,
with
yes.
his universe because it's just like it's almost like story cocaine in a sense. The way I describe it to people is like you're blowing lines of coke with his story because he throws something that rewards the reader for sticking around and keeps the story fun without having to rely on Deus Ex Machina to flesh the plot out. And the plot can get in depth in terms of how much he puts into it,
Mm.
but the plot doesn't get overtly complicated.
Rich, would you consider, like, quite straightforward, would you consider George R. Martin a copycat of Tolkien?
I wouldn't say he's a copycat. I'd say he's inspired by him, but he did create something that doesn't feel like it's a copy. He
Hmm.
wanted something from, I guess, more of a brutal, realistic standpoint of how people can be very corrupted by power, which you mentioned it. That's kind of the premise of Lord of the Rings, but the Lord of
Yeah.
the Rings is more like a living being belief of the spirit that can triumph over overwhelming odds, whereas Game of Thrones, the rule is don't die.
Yeah. That's like, when I think of Lord of the Rings, it's like more heartwarming. Uh, I actually haven't read the Game of Thrones novels. Has any one of you?
No, I didn't. I just watched the
I have
series.
read the first one.
Hmm. What can you say about the writing style?
Not as wordy as Tolkien,
Hmm.
but still very dialogue laden and on the more intricate side of to where you're going to invest time in reading it. The language setup isn't as hard. Like the prose is not as refined as Tolkien's, but there's still so much depth because they're telling chapters from different characters' points of views, which is a very interesting thing, especially during the time that Game of Thrones came out, because that whole series dropped. I want to say like the '90s, well before the show ever did. So for something like that to kill off a main character in your first book
Yeah,
and tell different chapters from different points of view as characters, that was almost unheard of at the time.
yeah. I
Yeah,
think he definitely set a precedent there with killing the main character in the first book. That was really. I mean, it shocked a lot of people in the series as well, and obviously the readers already knew what was happening, which is where these funny clips originate from. But I think a lot of series or shows rather that followed after Game of Thrones try to mimic this a little bit, and these days you cannot really think that any character survives even the first episode.
it's like a, you know, in Game of Thrones we actually have like a coherent narrative, and actually Ned Stark's death makes sense. I mean, the story
Wait,
builds around
spoiler,
that.
spoiler.
Yeah, well, come on. Well, spoiler. The spoiler. The show ends pretty shitty, I gotta say. So it's not really. I would say it's worth it. Give it a shot, but yeah, the ending is gonna. I don't give a this show doesn't give a damn about spoilers. Um, well, now what
Yeah,
I wanted to say. Look,
sorry.
nowadays, no, that's okay. Nowadays, I don't even want to refer to the latest Star Wars movies, but there's a difference between like shocking the audience and, you know, just for the sake of shock value, like, oh my god, they didn't kill him off, right? And actually having a plan for this whole stuff.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I'm gonna chime in here for a second because I think that this is really the issue I have personally with the whole like fantasy or generally shows and movies these days. That they are really too focused on making money with it and not like creating art. At least that's what I feel because they're so focused on, as you said, shocking the audience, so they have something to share on YouTube or something, so people actually join the show and watch it over that shock or whatever it was, instead of trying to make or thinking ahead like multiple series or shows to actually have a plan and have a story arc that makes sense and is not just there to get people to watch it.
Oh yeah. Rich, are you like a, or we're talking like post-COVID world, were you a cinema person?
I wasn't too much of a cinema person. There was a point maybe when I was younger that I got excited going to movie theaters because Hollywood was still not quite out of ideas. But uh, I don't really care for movies all that much anymore. There's nothing that really excites me. That just releases are so vapid nowadays. It feels like all the greatest movies are behind us. I often find myself watching classics like Unforgiven's a good example. My fiance and I, when we went to the mountains to get away a few months ago, the cabin that we rented had some DVDs in it, and we were going through and like, hey, what can we watch for the night? We'll light a fire up and have some steaks, and we found Unforgiven with Clint Eastwood and Morgan Freeman. I had never seen that movie before. I know that Clint Eastwood and Morgan Freeman together are terrific, let alone when Clint Eastwood gets to be in a Western, because I grew up watching stuff like Hang 'em High and the Dollars trilogy.
Yeah.
And I was like, I have to watch this. So we put it in, and it was phenomenal. It was just terrific.
Well, God bless that guy who put that movie in the cabin in the woods there, man. That's awesome.
Yeah, I gotta email them my thanks. Like, out of all the movies you had, that was a terrific one to put in there. Thank you, because they don't make movies like they used to anymore. You can tell the contrast. You watch something nowadays that's so CGI laden.
Yeah.
But they follow the same regurgitated plot points or characteristics and behaviors for their characters. And then you look at classics like a good example I had this talk with someone was Jurassic Park. It was a spectacle to watch. It felt organic. It felt alive. The set was somewhere actually in nature, and they used animatronics that just made the experience seem so much more real and getting the audience just involved in it. And you watch this and go, oh my God, could dinosaurs actually walk like that? Like, as a kid, you're mesmerized by it. It just feels so real, and it's just beautiful to watch. And now it's just everything is just cookie cutter reliance on CGI and bad scripts. Like, you get a few movies that do well, but overall, that just seems to be the trend nowadays.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Alex, I believe you can sing a song about that, right?
Yeah, well. Yeah, no, what I was where I really like lost hope in this whole thing was when I discovered that they actually do CGI the tears onto the actors these days. And it was like, seriously, I mean, you cannot even get an actor who can cry on cue. I mean, this is really part of his job. And now you just use CGI to do that. I mean, that's not even that is real anymore. And I mean, in some movies, great actors, I guess, still do it. But I heard that this is a thing, and I was like, oh man, come on. Are we really at that stage now?
I assume you guys are both a little bit older than I am. I assume this is correct. Rich and Alex, I gotta ask you, since this stream revolves a little bit around Lord of the Rings, have you guys seen this in the cinema? Because I couldn't. I was too young back in the days.
I actually didn't see them in the cinema. No, I think. Oh wait, hold on. I think the first one I saw in the cinema, but the others I watched at home.
So you watched the first one and you said I don't want to watch the two others.
Yeah, I mean I was young, you know.
Well. Bless you, Alex.
Yes.
Rich, what about you?
I am remiss and sad to say I did not see any of them in cinemas. I remember watching the first one on a double VHS set back when Blockbuster was still a thing, if that's
Wow.
indicative of my age at all. I remember popping in one day and watching it, and it was very fun to watch. But no, I never saw them in cinemas. I wish I would have because they're fantastic.
Yes, I actually envy people who I mean, they are still showing these movies like occasionally in the cinema, and especially during the COVID stuff. They put the movies up again in the cinema, and I considered going there. But what I really envy the people who had like their first experience with these movies in the cinema. You know, now it would be like a cheap knockoff. Like, okay, I already know how the story goes, but actually going into the cinema, not knowing what you expect, and then you get a movie like this, holy crackers, man!
Yeah, that's actually what I felt about Star Wars. Obviously, I didn't go into the first, like the oldest episodes because I'm not that old. But episode 1 to 3, I actually watched in the cinema the first time, and people don't like the prequels, right? And I think a big part of why I actually did enjoy them, despite all the weird things they have, is because I watched them first time in the cinema. Because that I do think that really makes a difference for movies like that, especially like these huge movies with lots of action and great scenery and pictures and imagery, right? And especially also the sound is very important with soundtracks like the Star Wars soundtrack from John Williams. That's truly a big difference, I think, if you watch it in the cinema. And sometimes I think it actually makes the movie better than if you were to watch it at
Oh
home.
yeah. Rich, what's your take on Star Wars?
I actually got to watch the re-release of the original trilogy in movies with my dad. Because my dad, that was like one of the main series he watched when he was younger. And the original trilogy was timeless because it told a story that drew inspiration from various other things in life, and it meshed well together. It was a spectacle of a ride to be on, and it told a story. And it just, like Alex said, the visuals and the sound were all there to really engross the audience into going, "Wow, we're watching something cool." So it was profound when I watched it. The prequel series came along around the time I was leaving middle high school time frame, and I did not care for those as much as I feel like they got too bogged down in their own story and didn't keep the spectacle up, and it wasn't well executed. But comparing it to the new trilogy, I would put the prequels above the newest stuff that's out now. I look at that, I'm like, oh god, it's garbage.
Yeah, I mean, we just briefly talked about the
Yes,
decline
yeah.
of movies. Sorry, Alex. You go. But I think Star Wars is like symbolical for this decline. I would say, I mean, the Episode 7 movie, I think it came out in 2015, and I would say cinema kind of died with that movie. Would you guys agree that cinema actually peaked like in the 90s and 2000s, talking like real high budget?
Rich, you go first.
Absolutely.
All right, no,
Sorry?
Rich,
You got
Rich,
lost here.
Rich already answered. He said absolutely. Alex, what's your take?
Oh, I didn't hear that.
No, that's okay.
Yeah, I think personally, I guess the 90s were definitely when truly great movies were still around. I think I said it already. I think about the early 2000s, where at least I don't know peaked, but definitely was like the last. Yeah, the last pull before it truly died. I think there are some great movies in that time frame.
Yeah.
And yeah, these days it's really just the whole crowd trying to get the agenda in the movies, and you can definitely tell what they're trying to do, and that sort of ruins the movies for me. Because seriously, if I go to the cinema and watch a movie with friends, I don't want to listen to some sort of gender thing or sexism or anything like that. I don't care. I go to the movies to not be reminded of that shit.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I mean, guys, I gotta say, uh, again, I'm coming back to Lord of the Rings. I'm so glad that this Lord of the Rings trilogy was made at this specific time it was. I could see it being made like with really dated effects if it were made any earlier. And it would be fucked up by studios if it were made any later. Uh, I don't know if you guys heard about that. Amazon got the rights for a series, for a Lord of the Rings series. I wonder how that's gonna be. Yeah.
Oh god, I was just trying or thinking about making a joke about a remake from Lord of the Rings, and then you bring in that trope. Now I'm very confused.
Yeah.
Because I mean, yeah, they're just really trying to remake any sort of successful series from the past and ruin it in the process. That's really what they're trying to do here.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't. Look, I don't want to say there's never room for improvement at all. If, but but come on, I can already see like the hobbits having like Twitter bios, like pronouns and stuff. Like, I'm Frodo, he, him. That's I swear to God, this is gonna happen. I don't know, and I'm thinking about I'm thinking about some shots from the Fellowship of the Ring. Like all of, like for example the orcs, all of them had the actual language of Mordor written on their armor individually. Those beautiful sets at the Shire and stuff. And then I look at Ben Affleck and Batman and Justice League and then Aquaman and this bullshit. It's strange. When the Lord of the Rings got the Academy Awards, the Oscars, they got I think Return of the King got like Best Picture, Best Director, Best Adapted Screenplay, Best Original Score, Best Original Song, Sound Mixing, Art Direction, Best Makeup, Best Costume Design, Best Visual Effect. It should have won Best Everything, like Best Movie forever. They should have ended the Academy Awards right there, saying this is it.
You'll never beat this. This is the apex of
Yeah.
which you will strive and never reach.
Oh my god. Yeah, that was really agree. The cinema peak, like really, and it's if you think about it, the movies weren't actually that expensive. It was around 90 million for each movie. And I mean that they didn't fuck up the second and the third movies is like a miracle. I mean, we were lucky enough to get like one good movie, but three? That's
Yeah, it's kind of crazy if you think about it. I mean, yeah, especially if it's because the whole series has so much content, and then getting it all done in 3 movies, which actually really crush everything and are great and fantastic to watch. That's really something. I mean, that's truly not easy to make 3 great movies. I mean, 1 movie is hard. That's actually very good, and then making 3 of it in a trilogy, that's not easy, to put it lightly.
Guys, I'm gonna ask Rich first. Which of the 3 Lord of the Rings movies do you consider the best? You could also answer which of the 3 books.
Books, I'd have to reread to pick a favorite. In terms of movies, though, the Two Towers do it for me every time.
Okay.
Absolutely, I agree.
Oh my god, I'm the outsider here, man. Shit. I'm actually for Fellowship of the Ring for the first movie.
It's understandable. They're all terrific movies. So if you have a favorite that's different than the Two Towers, it's understandable. They are all spectacles and all tell different parts of the story equally well. The Two Towers for me, because they get Grima Wormtongue out from the King of the Rohirrim, then they end up going in to fight at Helm's Deep, and where everything comes together. I am a sucker for when people have their back against the wall and all of a sudden they go kicking the absolute loving shit out of everything that's opposing them. I will continuously die on this hill that I love that. I love that in the story.
There's this
Yeah, actually,
there's this
yeah.
moment. Sorry, Alex. There's this moment in where they are basically awaiting the fight at Helm's Deep, and then you hear this horn from the elves, and you
Yeah.
hear the I think it's the Lothlorien theme in bolero rhythm, and that's like my favorite musical cue of this whole trilogy. It's so powerful, and you just know, okay, they're gonna kick ass.
Yeah, that's. I think this is also a great display of how powerful music truly is, especially in movies, because people underestimate how powerful that truly can be for the audience. And this is also why I have always been a sucker for these epic movies who have these like epic orchestral um, soundtracks underneath them, like Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, for example, and or Inception, something like that. Because I think a movie that doesn't really, actually think half of what makes a movie is the soundtrack, in my opinion.
Oh yeah.
And I don't know what you guys think of it, but I think this is really something that gets under your skin and gets you emotionally involved in the whole movie.
I would totally agree with that, especially when it comes to the music of Lord of the Rings, which many people consider the best film music of all time, and that's it's really hard to argue against that. I mean, you mentioned Star Wars, but I would say Lord of the Rings has the higher ground there. Rich, what's your take? Like,
Well said.
yeah, I wanted to do the you got me right.
Yeah,
Rich,
I got
what's
that
your
reference. Yeah.
Rich? What is like your how important is the score for you in a movie? Because I could really sense that, like with the decline of movies, especially the score has also become very monotonous. You know, it's like there are not these melodies like in Lord of the Rings you will remember your whole life. It's like really exchangeable. It became exchangeable. How important do you think is a score for a movie?
Any score soundtrack that's with something that already tells a great story, it can be a make or break. I'm in complete agreement with you guys. You need to have solid soundtrack with a movie or like a video game that if you really want to make some impact with it and create it as a lasting memory, that score will be top notch. You could hear various tracks from the soundtrack alone, not even be watching the movie, and you'll know what scene they're doing. Like you hear the ring go south, and it's like, yep, there's the leitmotif for the movie.
Yeah.
You hear the bridge of Acid Drum, it's like, yep, we're running away from all the we're running away from the orcs and we're about to encounter the Balrog. You just know it sticks with you, and it's like the same thing with Skyrim is a great example. You everybody just about knows the Dragonborn comes and can sing perfectly in a language that was also made up for the game, but you just know because the way it is arranged, it's like each one has the recurring main theme in it, but they also have separate pieces of music to each help illustrate the scene or the story. So, storytelling is always important, but in mediums to where you bring sound and visuals into thing, obviously you want that score to help illustrate and really paint it or come to life. You don't want something that's non-melodious or doesn't have that hook that doesn't stay with the listener and the viewer, because otherwise, like, what did you make this series for then if you didn't have the music to go with it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, guys, I want to briefly also talk about the production of the Lord of the Rings. You guys can actually, you got the link to the live stream on YouTube. You can actually open up the live stream. I'm currently playing behind the scenes footage from the movie. Just don't do it with sound or you get a delay. Sometimes the behind the scenes or making of documentary kind of takes away the magic. Sometimes I'm watching stuff like that and I'm thinking, oh, that's how they made it. But Actually, there's a 2 hour documentary on Fellowship of the Ring, and I've been watching this like and not realizing how much time I spent on this. Like this whole production is magic, really. It's crazy. It's, I would say it's like a miracle that this movie actually got made from a person who was like basically a nobody before that, and he got granted such a big chance. It's really, I mean, yeah, it sounds like a cliche, and Rich, you said it before, and Alex, you said it, I believe, in a stream before. Uh, they don't do movies like this anymore.
Yeah, definitely not. I mean, I don't even know how he managed to get this made at all as a nobody. Do you have like the background story for that?
Actually, no, I don't know what exactly Peter Jackson did to get the job, and for some reason I don't really want to know. But no, seriously, I believe genuinely. This is like maybe naive from me, but this is the actual American dream. He got the job and he made it because of like rare talent, and he coined it. Absolutely, and that's what Hollywood is not going to do today. I mean, New Line Cinema, the studio, was taking such a huge risk. Peter Jackson was doing like indie movies before that, like cheap horror flicks.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think
Yeah,
there's
but I
also
think there's
also a very important yeah thing here, because he he really just did against all odds, right? I mean, I guess at least he was nobody, and the studio didn't really like produce anything great before. He just tried to get it done anyway. And
yeah.
I mean, we are all authors in here in this little chat, and there's something I want to talk or ask you too as well. What made you just decide to write your first novel at some point? I'm gonna answer it myself obviously later, but I'm just curious. What Let's start with Rich. What made you decide to write novels at all? And yeah,
I loved books, and I would write as an outlet when I was younger, and it just stuck with me. As I wrote things, I wrote like little short stories as a kid, and teachers would always praise it and go, "You need to really become a writer. You really need to become a writer." And I would just, well, I don't know. I mean, there's a lot behind that. I'm happy just writing my little short stories, and then just over time, it stuck with me, and I found it as a very therapeutic outlet for myself. You know, I got the creative juices out. It was a good thing for me to do. And then I'd say the first major big writing I did was about when I got out of high school. Some friends of mine and we were just talking one day, and we all love the Final Fantasy series. And I said, you know what? I want to write a fan fiction of all of us in a Final Fantasy series. And so I just wrote it for fun. I didn't think much of it. I just simply said we're gonna just have fun with it. And I would post them up on Facebook in notes just so they could read it, but then other people also had access to read it too. And there were friends like, "Whoa, this is really good! Oh my god!" And from there, I was like, "Okay, maybe I'm onto something." So around my early 20s, I started documenting and chronicling our Dungeons and Dragons game that I've been playing in, set in like a Viking campaign, and it's centered around from like the point of view of my main character in third person, and that would be something I would update every time we had a game to kind of tell it in like a epic saga. And then I think I stepped away from writing a bit when I joined the Navy, and then I came back to it for like the last few years or so. And then it was about a year and some change ago I got into ghostwriting. I was on Fiverr, and I was like, well, I want a gig. I like writing. I like to think I'm good at it, but we'll see how good I am. And I found out that ghostwriting is a thing to where you can write stuff for other people. And apparently people really liked what I wrote. So I kept doing it. And in the process, I got better and better at it. And the writing bug came back in pure form. And like I published my first personal book about late 2019 or so. And then started releasing other stuff, writing like PDFs and little ebooks and full-blown novels. And now here I am helping spearhead and co-author the Soulborn Sonata series, and it's that's where I'm at now, and I'm not stopping at this point. Like I just love it.
Well, Rich, you basically
Yeah, I
went
mean,
full
you've only
circle,
just
right?
begun, right? I mean, it's just starting. Sorry, I think I talked over you for
Yeah,
the.
I think I did as well. Rich, only thing I wanted to say is like you basically went full circle there. I mean, you started off with writing fiction, then you went into ghostwriting, which you still do, and now you're back to fiction, like with your first fantasy novel. Would you say like fantasy is like your genre?
That is my wheelhouse. I'm very unashamed to say that that is my forte and my passion, and I like to spearhead that for people. And it's always awesome to have clients hit me up and ask, "What can you do to help bring my story to life?" And some have brought long-term clients that keep coming back. Like I've got two right now. That one, I'm helping him just full on develop a webcomic series that he wants to eventually turn into an animated series if we can get the money together for it. But he wants to start on the online comic part. And then I got another that he just wants a story told for like a character he imagined. And God, we're like several chapters in now, and he absolutely loves it. So I, I get excited for them because they get to have those ideas come to life. Because I know what it's like to want to bring ideas like that to life as well. They just need someone who can write it, and I'm that guy who can write.
Well, Rich, I might be wrong, but it sounds like you found your place. Alex, I didn't want to cut you off. We still, your answer is still pending. Why have you started writing?
Oh yes. Well, started writing in general. I think I always. That's something I discovered pretty late actually. I always enjoyed just putting my thoughts into words, but initially it really was like posting on online forums or something like that, and it was always very verbose with the message. And at some point, I decided because I was reading a book about the Halo series, the video game, you know, and I really enjoyed this book, and I thought, well, I have a bunch of ideas for novels myself. But back then, I was too young to really, or was I? I don't know. I just thought I was too young to write things like that, and I decided, yeah, to yeah, put that on ice. And then, as you all know, I later started writing nonfiction books, as I still do. But in the meantime, this one novel I published was really an idea I just that just didn't let go of me really. And the social wars thing, I had this idea constantly floating around in my head, and I thought, you know, if it's constantly there, maybe I should put it into words or into written word rather. And then this is when I decided I need to get this out of my head. And I don't know if this is some sort of inspiration or creativity bug, something like that. I don't know, but I had to get this out somehow, and I had to write this thing because it was just bugging me in my head all the time. And after I put it into words, and I actually truly enjoyed writing it, I decided for myself that I will be writing more books. For now, it's nonfiction, but I will definitely go back to fiction books in the future. And at some point, I will most likely have a lot of books published because I really just enjoy writing itself.
Alex, do you like? I trying to, uh, like when I would be asked why I was writing something. C- can I ask you if you like follow a certain agenda? Are you? Could I say that you're a little bit altruistic? Maybe. Are you like trying to help people? I understand this is like a very personal thing, but what would you say is like the motivation behind it? I mean, you say I need to get this off my chest. So let's get a little bit deeper into that.
Oh yes, you actually got me very right there because the Social Wars novel actually is, I think, if I'm being honest with myself, there is also a way to change society in a way. And many people have said that the best way to change society or to influence people and how they think is through stories, right? I mean, that's what you learn in basic copywriting. And with art itself, society has always been shaped. And for this, I decided definitely as well. It's not the only reason, but it was definitely a reason to put this into this idea about the social, like, scenarios into a novel, and this way try to influence people with a story. So yeah, there's definitely a sort of agenda behind it to bring like some real masculinity back.
Yeah, that's actually the kind of the topic of today. And I would give the question back to Rich, because Alex, you know, kind of hides some masculine values in his story. Rich, do you think, like, very broadly speaking, is fantasy applicable to real life?
Absolutely. People write fantasy because they want to experience the most magical and wild of adventures, but a lot of things still at heart root in reality and tell some of the best stories. They just use the fantasy medium paint the picture more vividly, if that makes sense. um, Terry Goodkind, the author of my favorite book series, he himself had the intent of writing the series of, I want to tell human stories, but I want to do it in a world that is removed from our own, yet people can understand, and it paints the picture better. In my opinion, to leave that lasting impression on your readers, to go, wow, I remember this in this epic battle to where both the character and the enemy are fighting atop the back of a dragon sailing in the skies, and there are times before the castle gets mowed down by a whole army below them, and it sounds just more fantastical that way versus something that could be rooted in nonfiction. And it's not to say that nonfiction can't do the same thing. I personally find fantasy to have more vivid impact on a reader.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think that nonfiction is really sometimes reading it is really just like being taught something from a teacher, you know. And this is why even in nonfiction we try to put personal stories in there, so people actually get some idea not only from the author but also to get a metaphor or a real life appliance of the thing you're trying to teach there. But with a real novel or fantasy story, it's way more vivid, as you correctly said, Rich. And this is usually why it sticks better, and which is why I think that having these woke things in these movies actually influences people much more than they give credit. And this is where I think people need to write like or make art rather. It's not just movies and books that has values and that tries to get values into people's heads and like put it out there in a proper way.
I would agree with you, Alex.
Yeah.
Fantasy can actually, I believe, be more subtle. You know, again, I'm coming back to Lord of the Rings like for the 50th time in the stream, but actually, if you think about the ring and what it could all symbolize, you know, like Alex, I think you said like it's a synonym for power or something like that. Some people say the ring is like a synonym for Sauron is like a synonym for Hitler and stuff like that. So you can like, basically interpret anything you want, which is, I believe, a little bit the beauty of fantasy, isn't it, Rich?
It's wonderful. And yeah, it's like you said, you can draw many parallels and symbolism from different situations. Like people for decades have analyzed and broke down what the One Ring meant and what Sauron meant. And at the end of the day, you just got to take it at face value. Like Tolkien just wanted to tell a good story. And I'm sure that like things of that nature inspired him because he was from that time where the environment was around like World War I and II. So those events were happening. So there's no doubt that if it was an inspiration for him, he wrote it in. You know, we are ultimately the product of our environment and our times, and that can sometimes reflect in our work when we put that in there.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I think actually it's funny. I don't know if this is really true or rather if George R. R. Martin said it himself, but I heard that for Game of Thrones, the White Walkers, right? These zombies
Mm-hmm.
thingies are actually a metaphor for climate change, and throughout the whole series, they pretty much ignore it all the time, like most humans do, and then only think about it when it's too late and they can't actually do anything about it. I think he said it himself that this was the idea for the White Walkers or the metaphor for real life. And this is truly something I enjoyed discovering because you didn't think about it. That is this kind of metaphor, right? In the or while watching it, and this is the beauty of fantasy that sometimes, even if the author or yeah, the author didn't mean to put it in there, sometimes the whole story has a way deeper meaning to it, which you will discover later or like by accident, and then it's even more deeper understanding, and that is really when it makes it stick like forever in your head.
Yeah, it's not so much on the nose. You know, there are like movies, especially from.
Yeah,
I'm talking the past 5 years, and smell the agenda behind it. And Alex, you said this in the beginning of the stream. Like you constantly have the feeling you're being taught something, like sitting in school and somebody teaches you,
yeah,
well, it's bad to be a man, it's bad to be masculine and stuff. It's basically every movie of the past 5 years.
yeah, yeah. I mean, especially it's not just being bad being a man; it's also pretty bad that you are not a woman, you know, and because they are so much better, right? And this
Yeah.
is something you really, if you have an eye for it and try to. Well, at this point, I just notice it that there is a agenda happening again. But if you don't look at it, it might slip by through your conscious, but subconsciously you understand what's happening there. I mean, if you look at the Marvel movies, what are now are trying to make every male hero also a female hero, and all the female Avengers, was it? I think, yeah.
Yeah.
They got their own like scene where they're all walking together or marching together in that scene, and the people were like screaming in ecstasy about it, how woke it is. And I was just like, you see, I'm not like hating that there are female Avengers or something like that or female heroes. It's all fine, but why is it pushed so heavily onto my nose? Why do they need to make a whole scene about them to make a statement or something like that? Why can't there just be some female heroes in the movies and it's fine? There's not some special, yeah, a whole take for them, just so you see that they are all. What's really to gain there? I mean, except for obviously pushing an agenda.
Absolutely. Um, you know, allow me to briefly explain how, because this is a pretty good transition, how I got to today's topic, which might sound a little bit like, okay, what are we actually getting? I am not sure myself. You can see on the thumbnail something about traditional manhood, and allow me to explain. Uh, I tweeted something yesterday or the day before. I tweeted Michael Corleone, Sonny Corleone, and Tom Hagen from The Godfather. If you're a man, your question is not which one am I, but which one do I need to be right now, all right? And that's where I got the inspiration for today's topic. I was thinking about Lord of the Rings, where there are many like male characters. Like Cass is obviously 95% male. Thinking about my childhood, and I was probably like 10 or not older than 12, and that was the time when those movies came out, and me and my friends. We used to spend the whole day together, and whether it be like wandering around or playing video games or playing like basketball or soccer outside, like 24/7, we were like, well, I am Aragorn, yeah, and I am Legolas, right? While playing basketball, right? It's crazy, but uh, yeah, I hated it. I've always been Gimli, so fuck this shit. But the point is, back in the days, I always ask myself which one do I want to be, while nowadays it's more of which one do I need to be right now. What about you guys? Rich, I'm gonna start with you. Did you have like a male role model in your childhood? someone who you wanted to be?
When I was younger, and I can two-part answer this because I too have a group of friends I came out of high school with, to where we all say which Lord of the Rings character we
Yeah.
are, and it's just like I couldn't help but just giggle because I was like, we go through the same thing. If anything, they're the same friends that every year we try to schedule where we have a Lord of the Rings marathon and we watch the trilogy in its entirety. So when I was younger, let's see, who did I look up to? I know I did. I don't think I got too fixated on it. I watched a lot of action movies.
Mhm.
So Bruce Lee, I would say, was definitely one growing up because I watched a lot of martial art movies when I was younger. A lot of '80s action flicks because around the time when I was a kid, like the early '90s, they were still relatively popular. So like I grew up watching stuff like Arnold Schwarzenegger, the Rocky series. Pretty much all those guys were like, I guess, role models that I wanted to be. Like I remember always running around the house just going ape shit and breaking things. Tell my mom like I'm gonna get like pumped up like those guys because they're fucking ass kickers. And yeah, I have to say those are probably my role models looking up to growing up. That and my grandpa, like both my grandfathers, my mom's dad and my dad's dad were both in the military. And I mean, they were both reputed being great at their jobs, loving their families, handling business, taking no shit from anybody, and bona fide ass kickers. My mom's dad, he was in the Navy. He fought World War II, and he used to box for the Navy and then do a little bit of judo, and then got into law enforcement when he got out. And then my dad's dad, he pretty much did his whole career as a Marine. Uh, my Papa Joe was just a short, stubborn Italian guy that he just loved the shit out of his family. He loved cooking for people, and he loved shooting guns and getting into fights. So I come from fighting warrior blood on both sides.
Alex, what about you?
I just want to say first, that is fantastic, man. You have truly royal blood running in your veins. I love people like that. That's great, and I also like the story. Just wanted to add that. Yeah, for me, I think mostly it was, funnily enough, actually The Matrix and Star Wars, which is a weird combination, I know. And to be quite precise, it's actually mostly
Rich, you gotta turn off your sound of your video. You are streaming. We got a delay over here.
Okay.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Seems to be fixed now. Yeah. All right. Great.
All right.
Yeah, Matrix and Star Wars, and I think for the Matrix it's actually Neo himself, because I always sort of like the idea that your mind creates reality, and I obviously still talk about this a lot. And this is something that, yeah, really, really helped me back in the days to understand how things truly work. And I loved just the power he inherits to create, or to shape rather, his own life, which is what most men don't understand these days, that you can totally do this. And this is something I really enjoyed there from him, and which I guess is why I look up to him. And yeah, for Star Wars, it was really just, I guess I'm really drawn to power. Because, yeah, I mean, obviously, in Star Wars, it's always the fight about good versus bad, right? And as people might know, I'm quite versed on the bad side as well. And this is something I guess I truly enjoyed there. Looking up to guys who understand how power works and how the world works, good and bad, and how to use that to their benefit and to their own success.
Oh, guys, let's talk a little bit about the male characters in Lord of the Rings. I don't really know what I can expect of this conversation, but maybe I'm gonna find something interesting out. So when it comes to the characters of Lord of the Rings, the male characters, like, do you guys think those are there like virtues, like male masculine virtues that, of course, this is like completely subjective, but from our point of view, and we all three of us have, like, I believe, a similar view on the world. Do you guys think, Rich, again, I'm gonna start with you, that the virtues being presented in Lord of the Rings are virtues you would teach your son, your own child?
Without question, 110%.
Mm.
Like to me, those that Lord of the Rings is a portrayal of how traditional masculinity is, in my opinion, well executed. Because the Fellowship was all guys that they were scared and uneasy to have to take on such a great task, but they did it. They sacked up and said, "We're going to go to war. We're going to go to Mount Doom. We're going to go rally up all the Ents." I mean, they each all had a major task before them to work together, and I mean that that scared the shit out of a lot of people. Like you got to put yourself in their shoes and go, "Wow, how would I have performed in that?" And it's just one of those things like that's fucking scary. Like, as the Fellowship together, oh, we could take on anything, but when they split and each had things to take care of on their
Yeah.
end to make sure they stopped Sauron, it's like, oh, it just got that much more real. And so they have to do things to where they're pushed to fight, to grow as people, to not give in to temptations, as we saw with Boromir in the first movie. He was tempted by the ring so much that, as someone who had the best intentions of using it to help his people and the Fellowship, because he dude was a warrior through and through, but he cared so much, especially like in the scene where he's playing with the hobbits, and then towards the end where he's trying to protect Frodo and he's taking on the Uruk-hai. I mean, those are all masculine traits that I feel like just kind of gone out with modern times now. It's nobody wants to do the hard things, but nobody also wants to be kind in the right company. And it's a fair balance. Like you got to know when to fight, when to be stoic, when to be ready to handle some shit, but don't be afraid to also enjoy life and be kind and enjoy fellowship and brotherhood with your fellow brothers, your friends, your family, and to conduct yourself accordingly. You don't want to be this just godless heathen that, oh, I'm just going to be led by my desires, because being so easily controlled by your own impulses and desires and emotions, that's not a masculine trait. People misconstrue it nowadays and think it is, and they call it toxic masculinity. Not having any control of those is not masculine, because being masculine means that you are on top of your game, that you are indeed control yourself, and that you manifest your own destiny.
Yeah.
That was very well put.
I agree.
man,
I
say,
agree
yeah.
with that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think for me, I always thought that the Lord of the Rings really is a display of a man's life in a way, because they all start like as not very strong men, like living in their bubble of comfort at home pretty much, and then they need to go on an adventure, and they take their brothers with them, which is pretty much what we did as kids, right? And on that adventure to growing up and becoming a man, really. And there are temptations along the way, which you have to deal with, and you have to grow as a person, as you rightfully said, Rich. And this is what makes you really a man, that you like understand how you operate, how you can easily fall for temptations yourself, how your friends can fall for them, and see how they work with that, and what temptations they actually are, and how to deal with all of this. So I always thought that this is truly a great display of a man's journey in life, actually. The Lord of the Ring, the whole series, actually. And and yeah, that it's stigmatized to being toxic these days, at least to some degree, with the masculinity, is really just a display of the decay of that society. Because I mean, going out with your brothers on a huge adventure to pretty much saving the world, what is really toxic about that? I mean, isn't that like the basic foundation of what man should be doing, trying to save and fix society, and save people, and that the evil doesn't overrule anything? Isn't that really what we are always trying to do? I mean, that's what I really enjoyed about it, and where I think the basic idea, actually, for me at least, comes from, that this is truly a masculine movie, in the sense that it's just a journey, or journey of any man, At least it should be. These days we don't have this. Most guys just stay like Frodo in the beginning, and all his friends, and not do anything with their life. They don't even like go out with brothers and yeah, conquer themselves or conquer reality to some degree. They just stay in that yeah useless lump of of a man they could be, but they aren't. And this is why I always think you have to engage in adventures and adversity and struggle to see who you truly are, and also put yourself into temptational scenarios and situations where you have to fight them and overcome yourself to not fall into it. I think this is very, very important for any man, and is pretty much lost these days.
Absolutely. I would like to start I'm not sure that we get like all characters, like we can like do a in-depth character study of like every main character of Lord of the Rings, but there are definitely a few I would like to talk about. And the first one would obviously be like Gandalf, the sage, the paragon of this whole series. Like virtues of wisdom is the thing I think about first. Rich is actually on mute, so he's probably busy. Alex, what do you think? Oh, Rich, you are back. I can see. All right.
I do have mine muted. Just I didn't want any like sounds kind of crossing into the feed.
Oh, that's okay. I didn't got any before, so I think that's okay. All right. Rich, what do you think? How does one achieve wisdom? I mean, Alex, you just said it pretty beautifully. Rich, what do you say? How does one achieve wisdom? How does one become a a Gandalf?
Wisdom is achieved through experience. You have to go and experience things, and you have to experience lots of them if you want the proportionate wisdom to go with. Because the wisdom is just the state of being wise to something, and there's no better experience or teacher than experience. So to truly become wise, it doesn't have to be an age thing. Naturally, your wisdom should go up as you get older because you are hopefully learning more things. And if you're not, you've got a problem because you're not getting wiser as you're getting older. That means you're either not living or you're not learning from things that you're doing over and over. And that's one point of life, is to move beyond impedances like that hold you back, to learn from them and to grow wiser. And as you do that, you can pass it on to other people. So to become wisdom, it's really just the simple equation of going out, living, learn from your experiences, keep them close, and use the knowledge to make better decisions and repeat the process over and over.
You know, there's actually one scene. I don't want to say it's like my favorite scene, but that's so hypocritical. I would probably say this about like 20, 30 scenes in Lord of the Rings. But you guys probably know which scene I'm talking about. When Frodo is like burdened with the weight of the One Ring, and they are in Moria, and they're lost their way, and he bitterly says, "I wish none of this had happened." And I love Gandalf's reply, where he says something like, "So do all who live to see such times, but that is not for them to decide. All we have to decide is what to do with the time that is given us." And I could literally talk about this quote alone for the rest of the stream, I believe.
Yeah, I think if I just can chime in here, I think, yeah, this is really what people don't understand, that many things that happen in your life, and people, or men especially these days, they are, if something bad happens, they are like mad or get lost in their emotions about it. And what I have discovered in recent years is that anything bad that happens is actually good. That might just be a reframe to actually enjoy life, but I think it's really something to understand as a man, that bad things happening really just help you to grow as a person. And it's a teacher, as Rich said earlier quite correctly, that any experience you have, be it good or bad, teaches you something about not just yourself, also about friends, life, family, and how everything really comes together. And this is also where he talked about age, right? And Gandalf obviously being quite old. But what I always say these days, many men, they don't grow old, they just age,
Mm-hmm.
which really just means they just, yeah, put put more numbers onto their age, but they don't really grow as a person. They don't grow old. They don't get that experience and wisdom, which Gandalf, for example, has through all the things he went through and things he learned and saw and, yeah, experienced. And this is something that is truly missing these days, that these experiences, being good or bad, are very, very important for your life as a man, because it helps you to understand the fabrics of reality much better, and yourself obviously as well.
Yeah, if I may add, there's actually another quote from Gandalf, and it says, "I will not say, do not weep, for not all tears are evil." And I think that mirrors what you just said. Like the character of Gandalf understands that grief, or in that case, uh, bad circumstances, are a real part of living. We are living in a broken world. You know.
It's much like with death itself. People are always afraid of death. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, understandable. You don't want to die, right? But I also always say that death is really what gives life meaning, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because if your days wouldn't be numbered, what would you live for, right? The fact that they are numbered is what makes it necessary for you to put life into these days you have. And this means good or bad things happening in your day or in your life, rather.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, understanding that some bad things happen and that it's a broken world and that people are not perfect at all, and that there are things they will do to you which you don't like, but there are also things they will do to you that you do like, and you just have to understand that that these things are natural and they are part of your life, and you, like, mourning them doesn't really do anything. You have to accept them and understand, and yeah, work through them yourself. This is very important.
Uh, Obviously, you could see references between the work of Lord of the Rings from Tolkien and religion and Christianity. Rich, would you consider yourself a man of faith?
I would. I was brought up in a Catholic upbringing, and then as I got older, I started leaning towards more like non-denominational Christian faith.
Mm.
And I'm actually glad you asked that question, because I recently went live on Twitter a few weeks ago, uh, and part of that live feed was just me coming back to the faith in a new perspective. Because around like my 20s, I wouldn't say I cast it off entirely, but I wasn't about it, because growing up I've had some bad experiences with the church,
Mm.
that it was like, why would God let all these terrible things happen, and why would his people be so wretched and show the worst parts of humanity in a place where we're supposed to be the best? And so it kind of just soured me from those things. And I was like that for a few years, and then a couple of years ago, my fiance and I were in a car accident where a drunk driver hit us, and he could have very well killed us. Like, he was hauling ass, and we got hospitalized for it. And thank God that we're alive and well for it.
Mm.
But that made me kind of revisit it and go, okay, I'm. It's like one of those paradigm shifts you have, to where you reevaluate your life after something significant. And I did, and I started revisiting just old teachings. My dad and I used to Bible study a lot when I was younger, and I went, the people can sour faith bad, and people can become extremists. That doesn't mean that we have to. We can adhere to the teachings of God, and it doesn't have to be just faith of Christianity. It could be around the world, because the travels I've been around the world, I got to experience other cultures. Like in Japan, I went over to the Great Kamakura Buddha they had there, and it was cool getting insight of like what their belief system was there,
Mm.
and getting to see how the Muslims operated when I was in Kuwait and Dubai. It opens your eyes to let you know that at the center of all those faiths, the important thing they stress is do well by your fellow man, love your family, be pious, and there are lessons intertwined in faith that go beyond just overzealous, blind adherence to morals. Like, oh, well, we have to do this because we're trying to be more righteous than the family next to us. That's not the point of it. The point of those things is that each one, like the Bible says, where they had parables, is to be a parable that there are underlying values that contribute to a well structured society and for us to be better humans. And I think a lot of it gets lost nowadays in the sauce of that because you have people that have gone to the extremism and twisted the word of God to better benefit and suit their narrative versus taking it for what it is and go, okay, there's an important lesson in there. What can I learn from it? And just after that, I've revisited and ultimately kind of stepped back into the faith of Christianity in a new light to where I want to be able to live those values as they are instead of twisting them in some holy light, if that makes sense.
It does. And you know, it actually doesn't even contradict what we said before. You know, when I was saying that for example, Sauron of Lord of the Rings is like an allegory for Hitler. I believe that's how you can misinterpret some stuff in a, I mean, in a good or in a bad way, and that's a little bit, I would say, the danger of when I'm speaking about the New Testament, which is really broadly written. It just really it's easy to be interpreted in so many ways. Yeah, but Rich, um, do you find? I'm sorry if I'm drifting apart a little bit, but this is it's really interesting right now. Rich, do you how do I put this right? Do you find yourself can you put faith and what you would consider masculinity, uh, you know, can you like combine those two things, or do those two things contradict with each other? When I'm thinking about like you know, yeah, just give me your answer.
It's I would say that's a balance. That's
Mm-hmm.
situational. I truly believe at the best, yes, they can. Faith is having the will to continue on, even if you have no definite end goal. To have faith means that you believe in something beyond the tangible,
Mm-hmm.
logical, and rational. And sometimes that's the very last bastion of hope that people have. And that's a super masculine trait, in my opinion, to be able to hold out hope even when everything in front of your very eyes looks as though it's about to come down on you,
Yep.
because it takes masculinity and extreme toughness to be able to continue to weather suffering for the sake of faith, whereas you could just throw in the towel right there if you're willing to reasonably push beyond immediate suffering because you have faith and know that something lies on the end of it beyond suffering. Then to be able to continue to weather that beating that you're taking is one of the most masculine traits you could ever have. It can also go into folly if the faith is unbased, unjustified, and it's completely blind to a point where you're doing it just for faith's sake. Like you're praying that, oh, I just pray that my situation will get better. I have to have faith that it's going to get better. And then someone asks you, what are you doing to make it better on your end? Oh, I'm just praying about it a lot and having faith. It's like that's not going to fix your fucking
Mm.
situation. You need to step up and do it for yourself. And like I've had talks with people where I go, prayer is a wonderful thing because you are generating positive intention and energy to put out into the world, and that's always a good thing. But you cannot rely on that as like your magic lamp that your problems are just going to go away like that. Sometimes, once in a blue moon, that I explain and attribute to random chance, things line up to where it does make something go away and your problem solved. It's super rare though. That's like the anomaly of the fabric of life, and I don't advise people banking on that. You have a better chance of winning the lottery than that happening. You have to take affirmative action in your life. And then while you're weathering and toiling to meet that next result, then yeah, by all means, keep praying about it, because that helps keep your spirits enlivened. You speak it into existence, or at least think it, and it's like positive reinforcement for yourself and others as well, like a sign of goodwill. And people say, oh, I'll pray for you. It's good. I think it's a terrific thing that people would do that for me, and I in turn tell people, you know what, I'll pray for you about it if that's the case, because
Mm.
I want to see your situation better. So faith is definitely within the right boundaries a masculine trait.
A very interesting worldview, and I gotta agree. It's very funny that you just said it this way, because I believe uh, in most parts of the world, a common understanding is that Christianity equals a passive lifestyle, a lifestyle where you gotta hope that something great happens, a lifestyle where you not like take actions. Um, Alex, what about you? I kind of forgot about you now in the last few minutes. Speaking of balance, um, would you consider yourself a man of faith?
My view on this is actually quite different, I guess.
Mm.
Personally, I don't believe in some sort of deity, but I do think that religion actually has a great use in society. And I do think, especially these days, we could use much more religion. And whatever religion you choose doesn't really matter to me, even though I actually was raised Christian.
Mm.
Um, and I think that the religion itself isn't really the issue, if it's being passive or not. But I definitely agree with you when you say that, especially with Rich here, that you actually have to put in action, otherwise nothing happens. It's like I was reminded of this quote when people say, "Goals without action are just dreams." You could also say prayers without action are just dreams, right? I mean, it's pretty much the same.
Mm.
And for this, I think that no matter what you believe in, if you believe in a religion or not, or in any faith, you always need to put in the action yourself. And this is the important part here, which is, I think, taught in religion as well, and which is what we are lacking these days heavily. That people don't really have morals, or at least a moral guideline. Even though I am very aware that some of the doctrines I teach tell you not to be into morals, which is where people always call me a hypocrite, but it's the nuance here that sometimes morals are very helpful to keep society in a healthy state. Because if you look at what people are doing these days, with literally everything being allowed, I mean, look at what we got from it compared to when people had rules. They pretty much, apparently, they are given from God, but in the end, you set them for yourself, right? If you believe in it or not, this is your decision, right?
Mm.
So you set your own rules and guidelines, pretty much. And I think this is important because it, in my opinion, makes for a better society if people actually believe in something. So I just always said that religion, in my estimation, is really just the experience from man back in the days, what they thought would help society and other men and other people in general to be better men, to create a better society, to create a healthy and better living together with other people and other humans. And for this, I do think that we are in desperate need for religion these days.
Uh, I was just thinking about. I didn't expect this whole conversation to go about this topic, but it's kind of interesting. When again, back to Lord of the Rings, when Frodo longs for the punishment of Gollum. Again, we are still in Moria. I like the way Gandalf rebukes him, and he says, "Many that live deserve death, and some that die deserve life. Can you give it to them?" It's Rich. I gotta ask you, doesn't this isn't this like an exact copy, basically, from what Jesus says in the New Testament?
Jesus was a kind man, but he also didn't take shit. A lot of people
Mm.
forget that when he found the Pharisees messing around in the temples and the churches, like trying to profit and line their own pockets with it, he was flipping tables and he was yelling at them. Like, I think modern Christianity makes so many, especially the men, just so tame and meek and weak that
Yes.
they push so much of the New Testament in the form of, well, we just need to keep turning the other cheek no matter what. We're supposed to be tame. We're supposed to be docile. We're supposed to be super kind because that's the way we're going to get into heaven. And it's like, I look at the Old Testament and I like a lot of stories of the Old Testament better because God was just straight up with people. Like, he was throwing plagues, he was killing people, he was like, "Y'all gonna act like this? Eye for an eye, motherfucker!" Like he didn't play no games, and I feel too many people overlook those parts of the Bible as well because they want to think that believing in a kinder version of reality is going to make reality better than what it is, and it's not. And yeah, it's you got to know when to handle business, and you got to know when to just live a good life towards those. It's a balance. You can't have too much one or the other. You got on one hand the modern church just weak, and my dad and I actually had a great talk about this. Like we're disgusted with how it's gotten. And on the other side, you have depravity and just pure evil where people are just violent all the time and completely malevolent, and that's never good either. It's walking that balance of knowing when to be able to tap into the one side and knowing when to tap into the other.
And actually, I can add to this because you just used the word meek in there, and this is something I have discovered a while ago through John Peterson. Actually, I don't know if you guys are aware of this,
Yes.
because there is this quote, right? "The meek shall inherit the earth," right? I think it's from the Bible, if I remember correctly. Yeah, and he discovered that this is actually a completely wrong translation these days. That people think meek means some sort of like weak to some degree, and also not being affrontive to people. And actually, the word meek comes from the Greek history when they used stallions from the mountains and broke them for war. These stallions, they were super fast. They could run very fast. They didn't care about arrows or fire throwing at them, were being thrown at them, and they responded to the smallest nudge from the rider, right? So these horses were very powerful and very strong, but they also were refined and controlled in what they did. And when a horse had these traits, it was called a meek horse. So I think, and this is what John Peterson actually said, that the meek shall inherit the earth actually meant that warriors understanding how the world works, but they are controlled and don't just like kill for fun. They use it only when necessary and are also like scholars. These people shall inherit the earth. And I think this is really what religion actually meant, especially Christianity, that this is what you should be. You should be able to defend yourself, defend your loved ones, and if necessary, fight a fight, but you shouldn't do it just out of like spite or something like that. And I think this is very important, and probably where this all went wrong with maybe just this little wrong translation there.
Yeah, it's
Understandable.
it's tragedy, quite frankly. Tragedy, the let me say, pussification of Christianity nowadays. I know it's funny. Again, I'm constantly doing bridges to a lot of the rings, but it's not my idea. But Frodo is often interpreted as the primary Christ figure in Lord of the Rings. I mean, he chose to bear a burden that wasn't his own, one that took a terrible toll and demanded an infinite price. But even so, Frodo walked willingly into the enemy's lair, for his sake, for the sake of his friends. He carried on his body an evil curse, Frodo walked to the end, even to the point of death. And if that's not masculine, I don't know what is.
Oh yeah, it's funny because if you think about how some alpha guys on Twitter think like they're really the shit pretty much, and some guy like Frodo is actually more masculine than them because he actually took some real burden on his soul pretty much, and he's not just talking shit on Twitter, he actually did things.
Yes.
I mean, obviously it's a fictional character, but just the metaphor there is very, very telling, I think.
100% agreed. Like it's beyond what they call chest beating. You're not, oh, I'm an alpha motherfucker for the sake of being alpha. It's like you're proving, the proof is in the pudding. You know what you are and you walk with it. And it's just like you said, man. Like it's a malady on Twitter nowadays where everyone's just trying to like one up alpha male the other. Like, oh, I fucking slonked down 8 raw eggs through a fucking beer bong and then took 3 cold showers and fucking shit $7 million before sunup. What did you do? And you can't help but just like laugh at it because you're like, what are you trying to prove here? Like, dude, it's okay to live a normal life that doesn't involve those things unless it's truly what you want. In that case, by all means, do it. But yeah, it's just it's chest beating and showboating at that point. Like, just live your damn life. Like, go do shit. Like, sometimes I'll occasionally get dragged into, I guess, like the alpha Twitter, and not in a bad way. Like, they go, "Oh, this motherfucker's doing some shit out there. Like, he's hiking mountains and fucking fighting and shit." And I don't ever try to like boast on those things. I genuinely love them, and I want people to see, like, hey, look at these sites I was at. Look what I did. And I don't know, sometimes they look at it as like, yeah, it's some alpha shit. I'm like, it's just me living my life. I like doing these things. I mean, yes, traditionally fighting and humping mountains is masculine, but I'm not trying to get an alpha Twitter and tell you how darker my coffee is than you.
Yeah, I get this also a lot. People ask me a lot how to be more alpha, and I'm like, you can't just give yourself that label and that's it. It's really just what you do. And when you do these things, the things you really enjoy, as you said quite well, it doesn't matter if it's alpha or not. It's just what you want to do. And people are so bound to that label from the alpha pack leader, and it's really, they do weird things to get it. I mean, it's really just external validation mostly on Twitter, but trying to be labeled as the alpha guy so hard really just means that you are not the alpha guy.
Yeah, it's like it almost goes to parody, and like in which some circles actually do parody it, and it makes me so happy. Like, I love seeing certain circles that we run with on Twitter when they're like, what's really alpha? Going outside and sun tanning your balls. Like, that shit just gives me life. I laugh every time I see that.
Hey, Rich, would you say social media itself, like broadly speaking, is it a curse or is it something
It
good?
is, at heart, it is a tool, much like a gun. It is simply a weapon. It is up to the user what they do with it. Unfortunately, an overwhelming amount of people have turned it into something to where you could liken it like a curse, because people waste their energy on there arguing with people, whether it's like loved ones or strangers. I mean, I can understand arguing with a stranger to an extent, but it's like, you don't know these people at the end of the day. Why the fuck do you care? And it's worse, in my opinion, if you're arguing with your own loved ones, because someone gets like this moral sense of superiority that, oh, I'm checking them because their stances are wrong. And it's like, are their stances wrong, or do they just have a different opinion you don't jive with? And you can't handle that. And you have such cognitive dissonance that you just excommunicate them from your life entirely. And you end up more anxious and depressed afterwards. Like, I don't fucking understand the mental gymnastics needed to perform that act, because it's like you do like a running start into an argument, and you pirate over it, and you're like doing 3 fucking turns to avoid the fight and keep deflecting it, and then ultimately it just ends with you doing a triple backflip off a bar, saying, "Well, you know what? I just can't fucking deal with you because you have different stances, whether mostly political nowadays, or just different beliefs that I can't be with." And then they throw a slur-ism to label you something, because it's always easier to demonize and dehumanize to be able to justify why they do it. And then friends, or even like they excommunicate their own family members. I said something about this earlier because I could not imagine excommunicating my mother or father for simply because they had their own beliefs and opinions about something that, even if I may not agree with, like, to do that to your own blood, it couldn't be me. I could not fucking imagine that. Like, that right there, that's a fucking mental illness in my opinion.
Guys, you both know Dylan Madden, of course, right? Like Moneybag.
Sure.
Yes.
And I love what he said. It's one of my favorite tweets. I believe it was even last year, where he said 1 hour of social media is more harmful to you than 1 hour of Netflix. What do you guys say about that?
I agree. 110%. Total agree.
Yeah, I think for most people that definitely is the case. Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I find myself, I have to put restrictions on myself when it comes to social media, because
Oh yes.
like spending 1 hour without any control, like scrolling to whatever it is, like Twitter or any other social media platform, whatever it is out there, I never feel better afterwards.
Yeah, I actually definitely agree. I had to get to the point where I choose a specific time frame in the day. It's actually two time slots a day now where I go on Twitter and not any other time frame that day. Because if I just go onto Twitter, like for example Twitter or any social media, and just with the idea to just check it, just check in Twitter, just seeing notifications, then I'm on there for half an hour and scrolling through comments which ruin my energy and my mood, and that really doesn't help me at
Yeah.
all. So I decided to choose. I mean, it's 15 hours, 15 hours, 50 minutes in the morning and 15 minutes in the evening where I check Twitter usually, and this is it because anything more than that really just ruins my productivity, to be honest. And yeah.
Absolutely. Um, Rich, what do you like use Twitter for? I mean, you said like you like to share things, like for example when you go hiking or somewhere, you just enjoy sharing this stuff. What do you think most people use Twitter for?
Shit posting, arguing. I
Yeah.
I see so much of that. Like, obviously, on our side of things, we like to use it to more productive ends where we want to link up with fellow-minded people. We want to be able to create. We want to be able to put ourselves out there and build our own brand and names
Mm,
and entities. But dude, there's just so many people out there on like the shitpost side of Twitter that they want they live to argue. Like you get some anon egg profile letter number tag that pops out of nowhere, like on a thread, just to like try to like throw heat your way, and you're like, who the fuck are you? Like you and your checks follower count 2 followers? Like get the fuck out of here. So I mean, it's more or less gets back to the whole what does the person use it for? I enjoy Twitter because I follow solid people. So my feed is usually great stuff. And then
mhm.
sometimes like the shitty stuff I end up seeing, I move past it or I just laugh at it because it's like what else can you do? If especially like on the political end, like God, it is Twitter is just so ingratiated in politics. It's stupid. So
Mhm.
just the things you see at that point, it's just laughable. It's like you couldn't write a better script than this. But I don't know, I enjoy Twitter because I'm able to write something real quick, just like a thought that pops up, and I have to say it in only but so many characters, or it's gonna run on. And I try to usually keep them succinct, so I write and then I like to share things, and it's a good platform to put stuff out there because the algorithm works well enough. Instagram's a close second because it's pictures, and again, I follow people that I like. I don't really follow the people that always got some bad shit to put up, or they're just always being sad and shit. And Facebook, I'm rarely on, if ever now. I really much have to run a few groups, be in engagement groups, and like have an ad account. That's it. And maybe for my family too, because I've had to unfollow so many people I know on there because it's just nothing but politics or just sad boy shit posting, and
Mm.
you're just like, I don't need that shit in my life. So I pretty much just stay off Facebook. It's an incendiary shithole of fighting of everyone just being mad at one another. And I'm like, I don't got time for that shit. I've only got
Yeah.
so much time in the day to do things, and I'm gonna spend it being around the things that I enjoy.
Yeah, I think people just don't value their lifetime enough. If you think about like if you spend 2 hours on Twitter, like on a political argument, uh, did you really make good use of your very finite lifetime? I mean, that's really
Right.
just something people have to ask themselves. What does it really do? What does it help you in any way? No, it doesn't. Does it help the other person? Does it change the other person you're arguing with in any way? And even if it did, like if you really converted them or convinced them to change their opinion, what do you gain from that? Did it make your
Exactly.
life better in any way? I don't think so. So this really is something people should ask themselves when they spend hours on social media. Is it really a good use of your lifetime? But I guess this goes for
Yeah.
many things like 4 hours of Netflix as well. But yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, it it boggles me because it's like you wouldn't use that time that you're arguing with strangers you'll probably never meet in real life. You want to put that yeah, that's what matters to you the most. Like you're gonna just like walk away and go to your significant other, like, wow, guess what I did today, honey? I fucking told this stranger off on the internet that I had this stance and they were fucking wrong, and then I just called them a racist or a transphobe, and everything was better. Hooray! It's like, woohoo! Wow, your brownie points are certainly there today. Good for you. Like, what the fuck? At that point, it's just like low IQ, bottom tier shit to do. Like, go enjoy your life.
I think that's actually a great exercise people should do. Anything you put online in your Twitter or whatever, you actually then need to tell the other person in real life what you did. Because that's, I guess, for most people quite embarrassing.
Yeah, like for me, I'm stoked to be able to say this is what I put out on fucking Twitter or like just on a feed today because I want it to be good. And do I
Yeah.
occasionally troll? Absolutely. I will
Of
admit
course.
I am a big fan of meme lords and the occasional trolling. It's just I grew up in the age of the internet, but I don't spend my entire existence on Twitter trolling. I just drop a comment here and there and then I just move on. And I mean, sometimes I get some that catch fire. Like one I recently dropped a few days ago. So, it was one dude I think like he was a check mark. I love dropping on check marks and
Oh
getting the
yeah.
followers, man, because that shit gives me life. Oh, I get so happy. I just simply said something to the effect of, I'm not going to take the vaccine because it has not run the proper clinical trial period, which is usually 4 to 7 years of a vaccine. It has a mortality case on it. A doctor did die from it, and that's not good for a vaccine in its current form. With all these people trying to say, take it, you fucking take it. And I was just like, I'm not going to take it. And I was being sarcastic with the whole thing when I was doing this shit. I said, well, you know what? There are a lot of people that are saying I should take the vaccine. I feel you guys should go before me because I don't trust these things with the vaccine, and it'd be very selfless for me to let you all get it before me. I'm going to rely on my natural ability to go outside, absorb sunlight, my high T levels, my diet, and my fight regimen to fight it off. And we're all in this together, people. And they lost it. Like, God, for 3 days, like they just would not stop. And I'd occasionally see a notification from them like, this is incredible. Like, I'm living in their head rent free.
Oh yes. I have had this experience as well when you actually have to mute a conversation on Twitter because it just keeps popping up on your notifications with like days later, and you think, really, they're still talking about this. I mean, it's it's
They
already
do. They keep
yeah.
going with it. And I think like the last notification finally popped up yesterday from it. Man, I wrote this tweet on like fucking Monday and it's still like popping off. And I'm like, oh my God, you guys don't know any end. Like, oh my, this is about as good as the cup of coffee I had this morning. I'm ready to start my day now. And I'm just like, I'm fucking chuckling. I'm all happy as shit because there's still people getting triggered about it. And then some of the notifications were some of the other like the lefties fighting with one another about it. Like, because one of them called me a retard, which I give him props. I commend anybody who gets ballsy with something like that in free speech. I was like, look at him go. Okay, the colony's on him. And another person that was like against me in this argument started arguing with him because he like, you can't say the fucking retard word. You better take your judgment elsewhere because like obviously your criticism is in the wrong place here. And I'm sitting here going, you know what? No, it's not. Please, by all means, you two fight it out. I'm getting so much entertainment out of this.
Yeah, see,
Yes.
but that is the actually how you use social media, right? These guys are using it detrimentally and ruining their own energy, life, and day pretty much, and you just get enjoyment out of it. And that
I
is
am, dude.
exactly
It's
how you
so
use
good.
it.
It's
Yeah,
so invigorating.
yeah, it is, and this is the key point, which I think most people really use it wrongly. They don't understand that it's, if anything, to connect with people or to get ideas or to put ideas out, and to actually get entertainment from it.
Exactly. And all it did is just it sent my engagement through the roof for that one tweet. I was like, this this is incredible. Like I have a great life.
Rich, you were briefly mentioning before that people should just go offline, just drop Twitter and enjoy life. What does it mean for you? What is like practical? How do you enjoy life?
Um, how do you mean exactly? How do I enjoy
I
life?
mean, you were mentioning like you would go around like hiking and stuff. So, yeah, what makes you? What gives you like I don't want to say a purpose in life, but yeah, what makes you happy? I I am aware that this is like a very broad question, also a very personal question. But yeah, how would you say you
I
enjoy life?
I am. I'd like to think I'm a pretty simple man. There's a lot of things in life that do make me happy because I'm constantly grateful to be able to enjoy those things. I love being outside, outdoors. I always grew up being outside. I still love it. New sights every time, man. I get so excited when I go somewhere new and I'm like, I haven't seen this place before. I want to go see what they have here. I want to go in and like just completely immerse myself in it, especially when I go to other countries. Like I remember I went to Japan my third time back in like late 2018. It never got old. I I just there was always something new to do. That that shit just gives me so much energy and life when I go somewhere new and I get to do something and keep a little receipt of it and keep it near and dear to me.
Mm.
Being able to create content, right? Of course, um, spending time with my family. I love it, man. I grew up very family centric, and I still love being around my family, doing stuff with them. And anything that really gets my adrenaline going. I love being in physical activity. Like I just went snowboarding last weekend. It's a thrill. I love anything that's like with a board sport. I grew up skating and surfing. I still surf when I can get out in the water. Yeah, just being outside and experiencing new things in life. Really, that makes me happy. And then obviously on the career side of endeavors, it's like just building my own position up and getting myself set to be able one day just fully work for myself and bring in the money I want to be able to
Mm.
help retire my mom and my dad, just to see them do well and make sure that like my fiance doesn't ever have to really work again if she chooses not to. Like just let her go, hey honey, we're going somewhere. Pack your bags, get your passport, let's go. Just be able to do that off a whim. Like those things make me happy.
Well, Rich, speaking of enjoying life, would you consider yourself, I mean, briefly talking about you being an author and a ghostwriter, do you consider yourself being a perfectionist?
In some things, yes. I
Mm-hmm.
will readily admit that I am a perfectionist in some things. I've learned to curtail it back because it was perfectionist to the point where I wouldn't do anything until it was perfect, and that can be bad, as we've learned. And I've had to move past that over like the last handful of years. Like, okay, it may not be perfect, but at this point, I'm just like, I want to be able to get it out there quicker, get it out there sooner. Hey, if it's got some things that aren't perfect with it, that's fine. There's very few things I get super perfectionist about at that point.
Yeah,
And if I do, I'm going to go to it and make sure I work on it until it's a result that I want before releasing it.
absolutely. Alex, what's your take on that? Are you a perfectionist?
No, not at all, actually. I'm really on the other side there. Sometimes I just just go with something that isn't really finished, and then I discovered that I should have put in more like action. And this has been a case for some things I have put out, and it's always been the case really for me because I really just enjoy doing new things. That is really what I truly enjoy, just new experiences, so much like Rich there, and doing new things, getting new things done. And the details are always a bit annoying to me. That's really just part of my personality. But I have learned to cover this up and actually look into them and get it done properly. But it is something that I have to fight myself with. I don't enjoy it that much. So I'm really just I guess this is also where my creativity comes from. I'm just a free living soul.
All right, guys, we're almost out of time, and Rich, the last minutes belong to you. You don't have to tell the audience where to find you. I put the links in the description. But you are going to publish your first fantasy novel, as you said before. When's the release date?
It is coming up on the 29th.
All right, and it will be available on Amazon.
S&B. That's probably where I'll start. And then I'd like to eventually move to an actual publisher if I could down the line. But in the meantime, it's easy to release that way. And I mean, it's like we said, why wait for perfection? You might as well just execute then and there. So the first trilogy is supposed to drop this year, and I'm just looking forward to keeping help co-penning the series, and we just rock and roll with it.
All right, Rich, I'm going to put the link into the description of this video. Tell the folks who are listening briefly what your novel is all about.
The book is about a young man that turns 18, and he decides that to make his way into the world, he wants to bounty hunt. And that provides him his living as well as his insatiable wanderlust to see the world. And he also has a little bit of a thing where he wants to go see if his parents are still alive on the other side of the world after a tragedy that happened when he was young. They never confirmed if the parents were killed or not. So he wants to go find them and ultimately go into one part of the world called the Green Frontier, which is pretty much the wildlands of the world where few go, just of how dangerous it is and how much of a mystery it still remains to their modern world. But that's pretty much what it bases around, and along the way he gets to learn more about himself. He gets to meet other people that share that, and it just leads on a series of adventures that help unfold and build that world up.
That sounds
Damn, I want to read that.
Yes, yes, it
It's
sounds
coming
like
out.
Yeah.
It comes
I'm
out on the
gonna-
29th.
All right, the hype is that sounds really interesting. It actually,
Absolutely, man.
actually
that really
mirrors.
sounds like a great story.
It actually mirrors everything we said today. Like it's you have like this setting of a fantasy journey, and obviously like it's like masculine values, which I'm sure, Rich, you're gonna put in there in a very beautiful way. I and many others are looking forward to your first novel, man.
Gonna be the first of many. I'm just gonna write, and I mean, I write with the intent of I just want to tell a good story. I'm not here to try to make like a Netflix series. I'm not here to try to become the next J.K. Rowling or anything like that. I simply want to write, put a good story out, something to pass along to my kids one day. And if it happens to gain that kind of momentum and reach those echelons of famed series that exist in such mediums, cool. But I'm just gonna write because I want to.
Well, that sounds interesting. Guys, I'm afraid we are already out of time. Anything left you guys want to say to the Precious Red Smoke audience?
I would say definitely buy his book. gentlemen.
Yes, guys, do it. I mean, not yet because
would
it's
also
not
say the
it's not
same thing.
available yet. But do it, man. All right, guys. Rich, a special thanks to you for coming on. Thank you, Rich. Not the next J.K. Rowling Rubio for coming on to Red Smoke. So you are welcome to join us anytime again, as often as you want. The cigar lounge here in Berlin is open for you, obviously.
Oh, beautiful.
Awesome, man. All right, guys. That's it for today. Join us next week when Red Smoke returns. It's Red Smoke, baby, for people who wear name tags to work. Masculinity with pleasure.